Holy moly! What a week! You know how Burks always said that he wanted to get his trades out of the way in the weeks before deadline day? Yeah, no kidding. Two gigantic trades this week have made Nikolai Kulemin the leader in games played in a Leafs jersey. Lots to get through, let's get to it. Welcome to the penalty box. Alright, first up, the Leafs have traded Kris Versteeg to the Philadelphia Flyers for a first-round draft pick and a third-round pick. Everyone seems to think this was a good trade for the Leafs. TSN's Bob McKenzie seems to be echoing the views of the hockey world with his comments. Kris Versteeg never quite meshed with the Maple Leafs, he never cracked the top six, he wasn't playing very well, and he saw his ice time diminish with each passing week. Well, to give you an idea of what I think of this trade, let me throw some numbers at you. Kris Versteeg is 24 years old. He's got 35 points in 53 games, which is good for 6th on the team in points. Which doesn't sound all that great, but it's good enough to put him in the top 6, and after him there was a significant drop-off in point production. Out of those 35 points, 14 were goals, which is good for 5th on the team. In fact, he was on pace to eclipse his career high of 53 points playing as a third liner. And that's not playing very well, Bob McKenzie? Now, I understand the idea that he wasn't a good fit and Wilson and him didn't see eye to eye on certain things. But this guy has won a cup, he can put up points, and it's normal for a young guy to have trouble finding a role he can fill on a new team. And if this is a struggling year, think of what he can do when he hits his stride and develops. In the end, we get a late first rounder and a late third rounder. I really thought we could get more for one of the team's top scorers. Especially since Burke has been proclaiming before this that he was looking for a player that could step in immediately. I think Philly wins this trade hands down. They don't need draft picks. It's going to be a bottom 5 pick at best. Probably bottom 2 since Philadelphia is almost definitely making the Cup final this year. And Versteeg on the third line complements their lineup quite nicely. I'm going to miss you, Versteeg. Oh, and by the way, the Leafs have also acquired Aaron Voros from the Anaheim Ducks for a 7th round pick. Yeah, who cares? Jumping into the first game this week, Leafs win 4-3 against the Boston Bruins. Beauty of a game here. Lots of rough stuff. Of course, you have Brian Marchand leveling Dion Phaneuf. You won't hear that very often. And of course, Zdeno Chara clobbering Grabovski twice. Daniel Paille of the Bruins opens the scoring in the first. But the Leafs come right back as Kessel breaks out of his slump at just the right time. Phaneuf hammers one on net, Thomas makes a save, but batting it out of the air, Phil Kessel tickles a twine for the first time in 14 games. That's his first goal against his former team in 9 meetings since he was traded, and Kessel's Boston curse has finally been broken. That's like a 500-pound gorilla off your back. The Leafs would score twice more with Grabovski and Kessel getting a speedy highlight reel toe drag goal, sweet like honey. But the Bruins are there to tie it back up, and late in the third, we're staring a 3-3 tie game in the face. Here's where Zdeno Chara clobbering Grabovski comes into play. In the first, when the Leafs were down by 1, Chara hits Grabo from behind into the boards. He gets a boarding penalty. But apparently the big Russian wasn't done trying to destroy Grabovski. Because in the third, with the game tied at 2s, Chara hammers Grabo from behind the net, and Grabovski is out on his feet. He collapses on the ice and hobbles back to the bench, very unsteady on his feet. Really scary here, looks like a concussion. On the bench, he works the smelling salts and jumps back on the ice with a minute left. Then, picking it up in front of the net, magic happens. Grabo leads a 1-on-3 end-to-ender, splits the defense, drags it past Seidenberg, in alone on Thomas, BAM! It's in, his most beautiful goal of the year, by far. Grabovski is definitely my favorite forward on the team right now. That would turn out to be the game winner as the Leafs grind out a gutsy win in Beantown. Oh, and by the way, the Leafs were outshot 35-28. Not like it hurt them though, Boston is one of the best teams in the league, I'll take it. Keeping going, the Leafs roll into Buffalo the very next night for a 2-1 win. That's their first win in Buffalo since 2008. In fact, it was March 21st, 2008, 3 seasons ago. Giguère gets the start and in spite of loads of chances, keeps the game scoreless after the first period. Then, trouble happens. Giguère can't come out in the second, he has a lower body injury of some kind, and James Reimer makes his second start in as many nights. But about 5 minutes in the Sabres zone, Lupul to Cabernet to Kessel, snipe! It's in and Toronto takes a 1-0 lead. Kessel's third goal in 2 nights. Yeah, I'd say he's back. Toronto keeps it going in the third. Lots of quality chances, but nothing happens until a Sabres power play. Joey Crabbe on the penalty kill forces a turnover at Toronto's blue line and rushes into Buffalo's end. He toe drags past the D, Deke in alone on net, lifts it over Miller's pad. What? Amazing goal, just can't believe it. Buffalo got one back from a weak shot on the side of the net. Reimer wasn't tight enough on the post, probably wishes he had that one back. Cost him the shutout, but not the win as the Leafs take it 2-1. And in this one, the Leafs finally did what's been missing for 6 consecutive games now. They outshot the Sabres 30-23. That's more like it. Okay, now, here we go on to by far the biggest news of the week. The longest serving Leaf, Thomas Kaberle, is no longer in the blue and white. Tomas has been traded to the Boston Bruins for their first round pick this year, prospect Joe Colborne, and a conditional second rounder in 2012. The condition on the second rounder is if the Bruins either make it to the Stanley Cup final, not gonna happen, or re-sign Thomas Kaberle next year, more than likely. And at first, I didn't like this deal that much, because losing Kaberle is always going to be bittersweet. He's the best D-man we've had since Borje-Salming. He's been with the organization forever. But at the same time, he's getting older and he's not going to be part of our plan for the future. Might as well get what we can for him. But I was expecting, like with the Versteeg deal, a player that would step in right away, like Burke said. So to get a mixed bag of prospects and late picks was kind of underwhelming. But as I looked into the deal a little more, I saw the value in it. Joe Colborne is the number 2 prospect in the Bruins system. He had a strong college career in Denver, he has size and all the other tools required to be a good top 6 center. It's just a matter of putting it all together, which he'll have a chance to do on the Marlies. And of course, 2 draft picks, not too shabby even if they're going to be late rounders. And if you're thinking Denver, that sounds familiar. Gold star to you because that's where Tyler Bozak got started. In fact, Colborne was line mates with Bozak in Denver. So, pretty good return. A little shocking to me at first, but now that I think about it, makes sense. And the word from the GM is the 2 first-rounders he has now will either be packaged up in a deal to move up in the draft, which would be great, or in another deal before the deadline, also great. Also with this trade, like I said before, Nikolai Kulemin is the current Leaf who's played the most games with the team, with Luke Schenn coming in a close second. And of course, I need to say this. Kaberle, you are an amazing player, one of our team's best post-expansion D-men. I will always remember you in the playoffs way back when. Thank you for the memories. Moving on to our last game on the slate. In the first post-Kaberle era game, the Leafs lose 1-0 in the shootout against the Ottawa Senators. Now, what can you say about a game where nobody scored? And it's not like it was a boring one either. Craig Anderson faced 47 shots. Of course, there was the typical Ottawa-Toronto rough stuff. Rosehill and Lassard getting into an epic fight to a draw. Their arms were moving so fast it was a blur. And it wouldn't be a Battle of Ontario without the typical weasel act from Anatawanian. Spezza trips Phaneuf headfirst into the boards, but of course we expect it from the red shirts. Anyway, nobody scores in regulation or overtime. Off we go to the shootout. Bozak wrister, stopped. Kovalev puts on the deke, looks like he fools Reimer, but Optimus Rhyme gets the leg out. Grabo slapshot, stopped. Spezza wrister, beats Rhymes. Here goes Kulemin, needs to score to keep it going, builds up speed and... oh, he loses it. Great. So there it is, Ottawa pulls off the win thanks entirely to Craig Anderson. Seriously, the shots were 47-22 for Toronto, and it's not like those shots were weak shots from the perimeter. Lots of decent scoring opportunities. Anderson gets the shutout, and if he had played like that in Colorado, he'd still be there and on my fantasy roster. But hey, the Leafs have made up a lot of ground this week. We sat 6 points out of the playoffs before Saturday. But a win was absolutely necessary in this game. And let me explain to you why a win was needed here. Almost everything that had to do with teams ahead of us fell our way Saturday night. Between us and 8th is Florida, who we were slightly ahead of on Saturday, Buffalo and Atlanta. Well, Atlanta got beat by Edmonton. Carolina, who holds the last playoff spot, got beat by New Jersey. But worst of all, Florida beat Tampa Bay. So 2 teams that we had to leapfrog lost their games, and Florida, who were trying to stay ahead of, won. You were in pole position to close the gap here. But instead, well, we're back in the bottom 5. But I don't want to end on a negative note. The Leafs do have a chance to close the gap here. It's going to be an interesting end to the season. Sit tight and enjoy the ride. Go Leafs go.